all towards the development of the child. The child is at the center of whatever they do. However, there are situations and times when this delicate balance is not honored by one or even both of the parents involved. And what happens is the focus comes off of the child and onto the individual winning a perceived competition, or maybe even a real competition, between the co-parents. This does not bode well for the child at all. It creates parental alienation, where one parent or both parents vie for the affections of the child to the detriment of not only the other parent's relationship with the child, but also to the detriment of the child's proper development. Narcissism and parental alienation have a very interesting relationship. We're going to explore this in Family Fest this year.
Hi, I'm Ronald Pope, the current president of the Barbados Society of Psychology. The topic of narcissism and parental alienation is one that's dear to me. In this profession, I get to meet a lot of individuals who were once in relationships with narcissists. One of the most concerning aspects of being in a relationship with a narcissist are the long-term effects it has on the victim. These individuals can sometimes have serious trust issues, poor self-efficacy, constant and unnecessary overthinking, just to name a few. These issues can sometimes affect a victim for a very long time, causing long-term mental health challenges. Therefore, education on this topic is a must. As it relates to parental alienation, this is an ever-growing issue in our society. It is also at this stage the narcissist blames the other partner for the family breakup, thereby causing confusion and self-doubt, this time within the mind of the child. Therefore, as a society, it is essential we become educated on these topics.
My name is Cornelius Bartlett and I'm the founder and chairman of Family Fest Barbados. I'm also a family advocate. I want to make an appeal to all persons who are in social interest groups for families, whether you are a social worker, a psychologist, a therapist, a guidance counselor, you're a member of the Barbados Police Service, you're a member of the Barbados Judiciary, or any person who is involved in family interest. I would encourage you and implore you to tune in during the month of July 2024 to hear more about narcissism and parental alienation. Of course, as we unpack it, we cannot, and it is not possible in 12 discussions to give you all that you need to know. But I'm hopeful that this would pique your interest to go and investigate more so that you get yourself better knowledgeable and well equipped to deal with these family issues as they arise. So just tune in on Facebook or YouTube. Family Fest Barbados is the handle, and hear more about this very riveting and devastating topic of narcissism and parental alienation. See you online, and God bless.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
And good night. Welcome. It is time for another discussion on Family Fest Barbados calendar. This July, we are sharing on narcissism and parental alienation. Thank you for joining us this evening. Over the past 3 weeks, we've taken a look at narcissism and parental alienation as it relates to each member of the family, from men to women, and then to children. Today's discussion will take a bird's eye view of the same, but from the perspective of the family as a unit. We will delve into the day-to-day dynamics of narcissism and parental alienation within the family, and how these two family dynamics play out on a day-to-day basis. It's our hope that this discussion will bring about a new level of awareness and hopefully assist in avoiding the development of this cancer called parental alienation. While there's no single pill to solve the issue of narcissism, the understanding and knowledge can assist the family unit in better navigating and managing positive outcomes. Whatever can be done to crush the head of this demon called parental alienation would be a welcome plus in helping to build and keep families strong. And that's our objective this evening, to put narcissism and parental alienation under the microscope as it affects the entire family. I'm Graham Vaughan. Let's get straight into it and welcome our panelists. I'm going to ask each of you to turn on your video and mute your mics and introduce yourselves.
Good evening. Good evening, Graham. Good evening to our listeners. My name is Cornelius Bartlett. I am the founder and chairman of Family Fest Barbados, and of course, a big family advocate. I have an interest in anything that affects families. And 2 years ago, I started actually, maybe a little more than 2 years ago, I started actually studying human behavior as one of my hobbies, and it led me to this whole issue of parental alienation, which is an extremely painful thing for a lot of parents, but more so than the parents who are actually the targets. The children are the innocent victims. And so, as I studied it, I realized that when you follow the research on parental alienation, you recognize that it very often leads back to a narcissist. So then I decided that narcissism and parental alienation was worthwhile discussing. And here we are now, looking at it over the past 3 weeks. This is now week 4. So that is about me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelius.
I guess I can go next. My name is Donatelle Cox. I am a guidance counselor. I'm also a parenting consultant and a parenting specialist. I've worked in Barbados. I've worked in the Cayman Islands. I'm from Montreal, so I actually started off in Montreal working and being mentored in the social services aspect of career. In working in these different countries, I've seen not only parental alienation show its ugly head, but I've seen it show its ugly head in different ways. And when you have a society that is very small, there are a lot of other factors in play other than simply the obvious psychological issues that come up. And tonight, from my perspective, I think I'm going to touch on some of those other factors as well that will also impact the family in its entirety. So that's me in a nutshell.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Fabian Sargent. I am a professional social worker. I'm also the founder and president of Men Empowerment Network Support. I've worked with youth and families across Barbados, I guess, over the last 20 years. And particularly within my work with men in Barbados, I've been able to see tremendous issues where parental alienation is a big factor, where many men, there's a large number of men who come to the organization who suffer from parental alienation. And the effects of this parental alienation is extremely troubling. And it has been something to really destroy families. It has been something that really affects children. And I guess this evening, my contribution here will be to assist with dissecting the topic of narcissism and parental alienation and how they affect family. And, looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you so very much, Fabian. Well, let's get straight into it. We're going to try to aim to be over in about an hour. Let's go straight into, we've defined narcissism, we've defined parental alienation. Now, let's talk about recognizing it, its activity in the family as a unit. Now, we're not talking about the unit as having been split. This is not after the divorce. This is not, we're talking about while the family is still together. What are some of the signs that can put you on guard that you may have a problem coming?
Okay, if I may take this one or open the button, as it were. One of the things that when you asked that question, one of the things that stood out to me in a large way, and I like the fact that you framed it in terms of the family is still intact. So we're talking about an intact family as opposed to a family that's now in divorce. So in an intact family, one of the earliest signs that you will notice as an observer is that you have a child or children within a home, and the child starts to see one of the parents as an enemy. Now, the average person hearing this now will say, "What? Well, that happens all the time, like that's normal." I'm not talking about a child that is just displeased with a decision daddy or mommy made. I'm talking about where one child or several children worship one parent as an angel and actually see the other parent as a villain. Now, to put that in context, I have to say this. I actually studied some of the attachment model in psychology. And it is against the natural, and I want to make this very clear, it is against the natural instinct of a child to actually see any of their parents as enemies. That's the first thing I want to make clear. Children can sometimes be afraid of a parent if abuse is involved. I need to mention that. But in the issue, with the issue of parental alienation, you're talking about a parent that is safe, a parent that is loving, a parent that is a regular parent, a parent that will punish sometimes, that will put a child under some punishment, for example, like grounding them, taking away a tablet or whatever, which is normal. Each parent will take their turns in disciplining the child, and the child will be upset with each parent at some point in time. The issue of ambivalence, a child will dislike what mommy does sometimes, and other times they will dislike what daddy does. But the context in which we're referring to parental alienation being in suspect is where a child, while still having mommy and daddy in the home, sees either mommy or daddy as all angel and mommy or daddy as all villain. So in other words, you have kind of like an alliance. The child has an alliance with one parent against the other parent while they're still in the home. So it is almost like daddy or mommy becomes a living dead. The child does not want much, if anything, to do with that parent. And the psychologists who will have done the research on this, they will tell you straight, because everybody who is into mental health practice doesn't understand this issue of parental alienation. They will tell you that whenever you see a child wanting nothing to do with another parent, whether they're in the home still or not, it is usually there's an outside influence. And that is where the parental alienation strategies come in, from the parent who's not alienated, and the targeted parent, which is the one who's being alienated, ends up on the other end of a child who wants nothing to do with them while still being in the home. And I'm sure that all of us knows of situations like that, where you have mommy or daddy bad talking the other person with the child, giving the child allowances just to score points. Because bear in mind that we're talking about narcissism as well. So if you have a narcissistic parent in a home, there are steep in the art and skill of manipulation, trying to put on impressions, repainting narratives. So that is my contribution in terms of that.
Can I jump in here as well? That's one of the factors of it. You can also see it when the alienating parent makes the child, or allows the child to feel as though the other parent is to be disrespected because they are stupid. And they will tell the parent such, right? Shut up. You can't tell me anything. You don't know anything. And the other parent will allow that to continue. I've seen families where, and you even see it played out sometimes on television shows, where you will have, like, say, for example, Roseanne Barr and her husband. He oftentimes said, I don't know what's happening with the kids. I'm here. I'm the father, but I don't raise these children. They don't come to me for anything. They don't take my advice. And in real time, I've seen that play out, where you go and you're sitting with a family and you're trying to raise an issue, and one parent would tell the other one, you don't know what's going on, shut up. And the children say, yeah, shut up. And there's nothing that other parent can do. So it's the hate on the one hand, but it's also the other disregard for their ability to put any contribution to a conversation, to a decision. Imagine you're in a household, you're living with 3 children, a mother and a father, and either the mother or the father can't say, well, today let us do. Everybody, including the other parent and the children, no matter how small the children are, will tell that parent, shut up, you don't count, you're nothing. And we also see that alienation come through in that way as well.
And I will jump on the bandwagon and say, in a more earlier sense, there's that real subtle type of force. There's this quiet tones. Sometimes a parent is whispering things to a child, don't mind he or don't mind she. And there's this objection that can't be understood. The other parent is wondering, like, what's going on here? And sometimes they ignore it and not understanding what is happening directly under the nose. And I'll even go a bit further because there are instances, and I know of many of them, where this parental alienation is not only within a household with both parents living, there's within visiting relationships, within extended families, where you have other family members also practicing this alienation against another parent. So you have, and because I represent a men's organization in a general sense, and these are examples I can draw from. You know, I have a child living in a house with its mother, grandmother, and maybe a few other relatives. And the family, as BHS would say, pick up fair age. So if the mother and the father has an issue, then all of a sudden, you know, you hear the aunt telling the child something about his father, your father in the bed, your father don't like you, he choose that other woman over you. A grandmother may jump in, and the whole concept of alienation is magnified because this is not only another parent, but you're dealing with a family. And that is where the challenge really comes because then it is confusing for that child. So who do I believe? You know, is one of he and the six of them. You know, 1,000 Frenchmen can't be wrong. This man can't be no good for
Right.
truth. You know, so therefore the force is even greater when you have to deal with a family versus a one parent. So these are things that really, really confuse children, and especially young children that are now developing, trying to understand the world, trying to understand yourself, and then they're faced with this type of push and pull. They often get really, really messed up, and then we wonder when they start to go through adolescence and puberty and stuff, whether they're reacting or acting out.
And I will
Mm.
add to that too. Sometimes the tools used by the alienating parent are not necessarily the nice whispers and be on my side. I've seen a 10-year-old boy get beaten by the mother because the mother had forbidden the boy from the time of his birth to go to the father. And when the boy was able, he was seeing the father going down to where the father lived and seeing the father. The mother found out one day and beat that boy in the road and basically said, I tell you, he ain't no good. Don't go down there again. I couldn't do anything about that. I was a teenager at the time. But you got also the actual force in terms of some of the alienating parents, what they would do just to keep that particular child away from having a proper relationship with the other parent.
I don't know if
Oh,
we can go on this, but
Yeah.
I'll just add, you know, there are many situations, particularly where the court is concerned, and this is another issue where the law courts step in, and that parent who really wants to alienate, again, you know, it can happen either to a mother or father, but the parent with the child, okay, that is doing the alienated, you know, then applies to the court, and oftentimes the females use and I see a lot of it with females, mothers who have custody of their children or have children within their care, and the court order is saying one thing, and they're doing something else. And what this does is that it kind of like compound or strengthen their force to alienate the father of that child, you know. So while you're telling this child, you know, your father ain't good, he don't do that for you, um, he don't care about you, he prefer the other woman as your children above you, or whatever the case is. Here is now you have a very willing father who wants to be engaged, who wants to father that child, who wants to support that child. And often there are many men who still support the child through the court, even though all this is going on. But this lady has this extra kind of force with this paper, this document, which indicates, well, look, this child is in my custody, my care and control, you know, and the father is out, you know, he's supposed to get the child weekends, whatever, and that is not happening. That is not happening. So it kind of like really, really compounds the situation and make it worse. Where this where the alienated parent is just sometimes I know men that just call and cry dry, like say Fabian, I don't know what else to do. I don't know where to turn. My children think that I am the worst. Right now, I don't know. I want to be a father to my children, but but this is what I am faced with. How do I get past this? Because now I'm being painted as the villain.
all right. That's really charged. I'm telling you, that's really, really some desperate situations. As you talked about we could go on at this. I think we could go on at this because I think we just moved from something that is a little bit uh don't want to overuse the word, but alien to a lot of the listeners, to some situations that they're saying, hey, wait, hold on a minute. Man, that happened with Brady down the road, or, this person that they know, or even me. And let's break down the approaches of the person who is the alienated parent. You're starting to see these situations. You're starting to see some issues with the alienator parent. You're starting to realize that you're dealing with a narcissist, or you're starting to realize you're dealing with a group attack, a family attack. The other person's family is coming at you, and they are partitioning the child off from you, or even well, we did move from the family that's still together into a separated position. But even when this position has come about and you're separated, where uh, there's a legal, the law has come into place. There's a legal order out, and how are you going to respond to this now? So let's break down these three situations that we've got. You've got the narcissistic parent. How does the alienated parent respond when you realize you're dealing with somebody who is pitting my children against me? And then let's go into, I've got the whole family who's trying to pit my children against me.
All right, Graham, let's go back to the beginning in terms of in the home, because we're talking about the family setting up. Unfortunately, I didn't carry the research, I don't have any stats, but I would hazard to guess that probably almost all of the men and women in the world who have ended up on the receiving end of parental alienation did not understand anything about narcissism, did not understand anything about parental alienation. So persons who are already victims are already victims. But persons who are listening to this particular discussion, for example, and you could want to do some further research to look to see the signs that you can look for, should actually have the hindsight to avoid what other persons walk into. Now, having said that, let me say this. Knowing, and I'm going to say this slowly because I don't want any of us or any persons listening to try to be armchair psychologists and therapists, trying to diagnose people, trying to create names to call your spouse and that kind of thing. I want to advise you against it. I want to tell you to avoid any form of name calling, any form of trying to analyze and tell the other person your analysis. Here's what I would say to you. In the context of the family still being intact, remember the objective is to think about your children and to think about the stability that a family that stays intact brings to the children and to society by extension. And use the knowledge that you're now going to have about the fact that your husband or wife is a narcissist, and the fact that your spouse is actually perpetrating parental alienation tactics or strategies. What your position ought to be one of management. So in other words, you as a spouse, you realize your spouse has narcissistic traits. There's no pill at the pharmacy or no magic wand you can wave to stop that person from being a narcissist. What you can do is, if you can look at strategically at the fact you want to keep your family together and you want peace to reign, you will learn techniques as to how to manage that narcissistic spouse. That's one. Two, when you see the alienation strategies, techniques being employed, you don't play into it. So for example, let me give you an example. I know of a religious organization that was setting a child against a mother. The grandmother of the child was connected to the to the religious organization, but they came at odds with her daughter, and she also came at odds with her daughter. and the daughter has a child, which is the granddaughter of the woman who is part of this religion. And you could see single-handedly that the organization was assisting in being negative and putting down this particular young lady, to the extent that the child started speaking disrespectfully to her own mother. And a separation started in terms of the alienation process. And the mistake that the girl now who is being alienated made is that she started saying, if you ever talk to me this way again, I'm going to show you, I bring you into this world and I can take you out. And that's usually very often the kind of posture that people take. And it is really a mistake. When you are becoming a target of parental alienation, that is time for you to put on your best A game in terms of management of your own emotions, management of your responses, management of what is happening around you. You see, very often, a lot of times people react badly because they don't understand. What you don't know brings a lot of fear and a lot of torture. But when you understand, and I keep telling people, if you were running a race with somebody with a broken leg, that you can see the leg is broken, you don't expect them to run 100 meters in 9.5 seconds. You expect them to finish that probably in maybe 3 times that time. Same thing with parental alienation. The problem with us as human beings is that we can recognize things that can be physically seen, but things that are psychological very often are overlooked and mismanaged. So that's why we say, Graham, the person needs to learn management while they're in the situation. If you are listening to this program or this discussion now, go and get some more information, seek professional help, contact people like Fabian or Donna or some therapist that has some knowledge on it, and start to equip yourself. That's how to approach that.
Yes, I have to agree. Manage yourself. You cannot manage a narcissist. You can only manage your reaction to what the narcissist does. One of the key factors is to be able to be very observant. Okay, but again, you're only observant once you realize what may be going on. Okay, but even if you don't realize, you can't name it. I had a situation once in another country where there was 4 children in the household, and the woman, the mother, was very manipulative, and she was threatening to leave the father of the children and take the children with her because nobody will take the children away from her. Well, he kept his observations up, and because of that, we were able to stop her from taking the children out of the country. We actually stopped the plane, and the only child she got away with was the baby, because she argued that the baby might not even be his. That's how far the manipulation went. Okay, but he was very observant, and he kept close ties with the school, and he kept talking with his children, regardless of what the mother was telling those children about. She's going to make it better for them, and he's no good, and he's just this, and he's just that. He kept talking with us at the school. We opened up to the children and both of the parents. And when he realized what was going on, he was able to call us and say, don't let those children leave with anybody today because she's up to something. And sure enough, the children were coaxed out of class and stuffed into a car, which is like, oh yeah, we're on it. So we were able to call the authorities and stop essentially a kidnapping from happening. But that was because of her want to have those children all to herself, because once she had them, no matter where she went, he would have to pay her lots and lots of money. And that was her grounding, you know. So it comes in different ways, and because of the culture as well. Sometimes you will see situations where the parents might not be from the same country, and then that is a catalyst, and that's how Fabian says it sneaks in. You know, you will hear little things that you people from there, and that's how it will start. So when you were realizing that this person who had love bombed you to start with, to get you into a relationship with them, is now turning against you in these subtle ways, and it's growing and growing. And with the children involved, you find the children gravitating towards the other person either out of fear, out of additional love, or out of lack of respect for you. Those are some signs to look for. And as Cornelius said, learning about it and being aware is one of the major ways that you can, you know, fix your reaction to what is going on around you.
I will jump in and add one of my biggest concerns. Um, this particular these sessions on parental alienation and narcissism, I think it is extremely timely. For some reason, it seems to be popping up here and there. I guess these buzzwords, right? And I still want people to be very careful with the labels because everybody is a narcissist. Everybody's a narcissist. You don't care wherever you go. That is the buzzword that is being used. But my concern really is the people that watching this show and are practicing, and I can use the word practicing or being engaged in parental alienation, but do not even acknowledge it or even realize it. My biggest, self-awareness is a major thing. And sometimes we sit in these forums and we talk, and we are assuming that the people watching could say, oh yes, I could identify that person, when very well that same person is the alien. That is the person that we really, really want, and I really want to encourage people to sit and really have a conversation with self. Do a lot of reflection and introspection and ask yourself some of the hard questions, especially when it comes to parenting and your relationship, and really evaluate your relationship with your child mother or child father, as we just say, with your husband or your wife. Yeah.
Sadly, right, I got some bad news to break to you. A narcissist will never ever do that. Probably part of 1%. So the healthy parent is the one who will do that, because invariably in these cases, in the family dynamic, you find that one parent is trying to get along, one parent is trying to make peace, one parent is trying to make it work, one parent is cutting all the allowances, one parent is doing everything the court says to do, and the narcissist, they're following no rules. So what you're saying, Fabian, I 100% agree with, but unfortunately, the narcissist will never, ever.
But I'll tell you this. But I'll tell you this, right? Yes, you do have some narcissistic traits, and I do believe that maybe acknowledging that the person watching this, maybe that said person may even cause some people to think or stop and say, "He talking about me?" You know what I mean? Like maybe we just can't throw your hand up in the air and say, "Man, this would never happen. This human behavior, anything is possible." And I thought that it's necessary to really highlight that you that watching it, you could be that narcissist, you could be alienated, you could be that parent that is alienating another parent. I don't even realize it, because when you don't watch this, you're gonna tell the little girl, little boy, "Father, you're not good, and maybe so. I just want people to
do
a
good
lot
point.
more.
Yeah,
that's a good point, Fabian. I agree. I would take back a statement because I will have to agree with you, because I'm thinking to myself, we thinking all out narcissists, but I'm sure there's some people who have some traits and just didn't realize that they were actually, because they might be angry at the fact that the husband or the wife left them, and they're just reacting how the Brennan acts, but they may not be all out full blown what you call narcissistic per se, but just maybe Brennan acts, which ends up in a result. Because one of the things I keep saying on all these shows, right? We have full control of our actions. We have no control of the consequences. So if your action is that, you know what, I am so angry, I'm going to bad talk that woman or that man every chance I get with this little boy or little girl. But then when the child starts to alienate the parent, you start to try to but it's okay to go by your father. No, I don't want to go with daddy. I don't want to go with mommy, because the damage is already done. So I take back that on the basis that I believe what you're saying, Fabian, is actually something that happens as well. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen often enough where the person is not a narcissist. From the research that I've seen, it seems as though this dynamic, at the end of the line, when you follow the brick road, very often you end up with a narcissist. And that's the researchers. That's not me. I can call names that you can go and
no. I understand you. I understand the research, but I also understand human behavior. And I understand research for what it is, and I understand theories for what they are. You understand?
But what I'm also seeing now too is this: we have children in school, And the children are labeling each other narcissists because they are recognizing certain types of traits that maybe they're
Are
seeing in
there
their parents as
are
well.
there are there
Maybe,
are we not
maybe
are we normalizing are we normalizing a terminology?
Yeah.
Are we
that's
putting it out there
that's
and
what I'm.
with limited knowledge? Because I
Hmm,
want us to be very careful, you know, and
exactly.
forgive me, but I could only be as honest as my heart allow me to. You know,
Hmm.
in Cornelius' contribution just now, he keep making mention of a parent getting angry. And these particular sessions are educational sessions.
Yes.
Oftentimes people that is exactly where they jump to. They jump to anger. I am angry. Sometimes it is disappointment. It is
Yes.
frustration.
It's
Sometimes
hurt.
the anxiety. It is
Yes.
hurt that you are feeling, but being manifested or being interpreted as anger. And sometimes we got to be able to use this language, this emotional vocabulary, because we as a people have not been taught this.
Hmm.
We don't use these words. We either vex, happy, or sad, you know. And how do we as professionals in these type of forums help guide persons along what they are feeling so that they can get a better understanding of who they are. I guess in this whole concept of narcissism and parental alienation, like really get a better feel as to where do I sit in this equation. You know, I believe
And
in
culture does come into play here as
correct,
well, big time, because when you've
correct.
got some people who have been able to control their reactions to what's going on around them, other people jump in and say, "Oh, you're soft. You can be a walkover," things like that, and they're in, so it's really a big deal. But the bottom line is this: as Cornelius had said, we are looking to educate. And because of that, we've got to recognize that there are certain types of behaviors that do not bode well for the development of the child. And if there are two or more people who are supposed to be responsible for this child's development, we've got to get it right. Check what is going on with yourself. How are you reacting? How are you behaving? And what's the effect of that? Is the child picking up your behaviors and also showing you those behaviors as well, regardless of the labels? So just take the labels out. How is the behavior going? What's the relationship that is happening? When did it change? Has it always been like this? There are some people that are together only because they've had a one night stand and they have a child with it. And they're now bonded for at least 18 years. And I'm going to make you pay and pay and pay. And it's not always with money. So these are some of the things that we have to be looking at when it comes to this whole aspect of the family, children, and the parents and extended family members with these particular children. So I think this is a good place to start this conversation about what's going on and the conversation that it can't end here.
One of the things though that I would want to, I'm sorry, one of the things I want to just tack on here quickly is that, I know that earlier, Fabian and I had a little back and forth about whether the narcissist will come for help or the person with traits will come for help or not.
Mhm.
I want to make this point here now, and I want to make it really clear that family, there's nothing more important than family, huh? And I want to make the point that sometimes you, the healthy parent, have to do the majority of the work in keeping the family together. And I want to encourage you to prepare yourself for that possibility. Because the whole, to me, one of the biggest mistakes that people make in family sometimes that ends up in family breakup is when you start to measure the amount you're putting in. If God has given you the grace to be able to put in 90%, well, the other person only put in a 5 or 10, put in the 90. There's nothing more important than family. I put on a plaque, there is nothing more important than family. Thank you.
I agree.
I think
I agree. I agree that family support. Go ahead, Glenn, sorry.
I think that's very interesting, and I would like actually to really put a plug in right now for the fact that I think that a lot of what we have discussed in Family Fest over the years has been very pertinent and aimed at fixing issues, sorting out issues after the fact and that sort of thing. Perhaps, Cornelius, we need to look next year or, in a year to come at setting up the people who are looking at being a part of a family and looking to have a family and trying to tell them, well, go and get yourself sorted out, put yourself through therapy and save yourself some trouble down the road, because it really is a painful situation. Anything we've gone through over the years discussed in Family Fest as the issues that we can end up facing. Why would you want to go through any of it? Why would you want to even risk it? Make sure you go and you do some work on yourself. And in doing work on yourself, almost invariably, you start to recognize certain things outside of yourself. One of the things I think y'all were discussing just now is emotional intelligence. And we are woefully bereft of emotional intelligence, not even in the Barbadian format, in the Caribbean format. I think we are Western. The vast majority of human beings on Earth don't have emotional intelligence. We are informed by the emotional stereotypes that are pervasive in our particular society,
our culture,
right?
Yeah.
So you come from certain Asian countries, you are more stoic, and you very you come from African countries and you're very garrulous and open and wide, and you don't hide what is there and things. But that does not mean necessarily that you're expressing your emotions. That means that you are perhaps going along with everything that everybody else around you is. So it's very difficult sometimes to know yourself, and it's critical to know yourself. Speaking of knowing yourself, one of the things that was discussed just now was the behaviors of people who do have narcissistic tendencies but may not be full-blown narcissists. And we discussed earlier situations where there is a extended family situation and we are caught up in a competition where usually, I think it can happen in the opposite way, but very rarely. But usually the person, the parent whose family you are living with, they have all ganged up and they are starting to cull the children away from you, almost like kicking the weak one out of the herd and saying, well, you go out there and get savaged. But in the case of human beings, the herd is usually the one doing the savaging. So let's talk about that situation where, for whatever reason, financial or whatever, we have come to a place where we are living with their family, living with whatever family, and you're starting to see those same things happening. And the problem now is it is not a one person. You can put the children to bed and say, come, honey, we need to have a chat about some things I'm seeing that are worrying me. This is the aunt, the uncle. You may not have a close relationship with the person who is doing this. And even so, you might say, I want to go to the mother-in-law or the grandmother or somebody. And you get 2 sentences out and they, you come in here talking this foolishness and say, no, you best man, you understand? And it's gone down that way. Donna, talk to a person that is feeling as though they are staring down the barrel of this firing squad named my in-laws.
You mean when in-laws become outlaws?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very serious thing, but normally you do have some red flags that happen along the way. It's not an all of a sudden situation. And because again of our culture, we have this culture where when you when you marry Graham and Graham's family.
But
Okay?
that's true, Donna. But I want to ask you. You said
Hmm.
just now about red flags and that sort of thing,
Yes.
and you mentioned culture. Our
Hmm.
culture has a distinct habit of ignoring red flags. We love to
There you
ignore red
go.
flags and just
Ignore
run
them.
with it. This is going to fix itself or something. I hear it time and again. So
That
we
is
can
one of our
even say that,
problems.
it's not a sudden thing because inevitably there's going to be somebody who's listening
Right.
to this
Hmm.
who is going to tell us, oh no, but it was a sudden thing. There wasn't anything to see. Oh, you
Because
missed
yes,
everything. But
you
just
missed
talk to them as
everything.
though they're right. And
Graham, I
And
I asked you,
yes,
Donna.
correct.
Sorry, you go ahead, Donna. Finish what you were saying because I
No,
wanted.
what I was basically gonna say is this: when it comes to a parent and their child, they have got to find a way to set boundaries around themselves. If it's the mother and the child or the father and the child, they need to have that boundary set so that even if somebody is trying to invade and take them away, you have that boundary set up. So you don't say you can't go and see them at all, but this is our time. So you put the focus on you and your child. This is our time. Okay. And make sure you eke out that time. Okay. And when they say, well, I want to go by granny, when they do go by granny, when they come back to you, great. I don't want to know what granny was telling you. This is our time. I'll focus on the us. So you build that relationship. Sometimes the only way to deal with the narcissistic type of situations is to focus on your reaction to it. And that's one of the key things. If your child sees that you are still a safe place, regardless of what anybody else says, because you have that boundary around them, that is one of the ways that you could stem the tide a little bit. Okay? That's one of the
Yes,
ways.
yes.
All right?
Donna, I
Go
I
ahead.
I I feel as though you're reading my mind, but I'm gonna put some icing on your cake, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not a big name like you or Fabian, right, in the area. But here's what I will say to you. I know what love and relationship can do. I'm an expert in that area in terms of love and relationship. And what I will tell you, you talk about setting boundaries, I will take it even a step further and say this. Even though parental alienation is a reality, you see this thing called love
Mhm.
and relationship, you'll be amazed to know, and I'm gonna give listeners a gauge right here. A lot of times, right, parental alienation finds it hard to raise its head above the surface, where a lot of love and strong relationships exist. I know of situations where parental alienation strategies were being put out for years.
Mhm.
And it took as much as 5 years before, maybe 3, 4, 5 years before a little smidge of alienation behavior came from the child. Now I'm saying that is, and this is my observation, from not only my research, but from my observation of cases that I know of personally, where because of the kind of mother who was a target of parental alienation, or the kind of father who was a target of parental alienation, showered the child or children with an abundance of love. Made sure they were the kind of parent that is, if you're the kind of parent that is always there at every event for the child, you're the kind of parent that's always doing school pickups, for example. You're the kind of parent that always find time on a daily basis to sit down and have a conversation with the child, hear from the child. I'm telling you now, without any shadow of a doubt, I don't need to go and research for this. I'm telling you now, it is going to make it a lot harder
Mhm.
for parental alienation to work. If you're like an absentee parent, you're not bad, but you're a workaholic. You spend a lot of time working and trying to just provide, and you're not thinking about the kind of things that build relationship, the kind of things that make the child feel your love. Because giving a child a tablet or giving a child an expensive watch or expensive pair of shoes is not going to be interpreted as love. Love has to do with time spent. So I'm saying now that one of the
And
best
seeds
ways,
planted.
correct. Actually, you probably, but you're borrowing my term because you would have mentioned that
Sorry.
in previous discussions. Yeah, because seeds planted is right, Donna. Perfectly well, spot on. Because the thing about seed, right, is that when parental alienation sets in and the child ends up showing the syndrome, the child may be disrespectful to you for a couple of months or a couple of years. The child may tell you, I don't want you at my football or my ballet recital. But guess what? Those seeds of love and relationship are in there growing, and eventually they'll bear fruit. I know that that's more like hope, and we're going to go into hope on Thursday. But I can't help but to say it now for those who may not listen in on Thursday, that the best way to cocoon yourself or to protect yourself or to put on a parental alienation proof vest is to make sure that right now you build a strong relationship with your child or children, and make sure that relationship is based on love, pure, good, old-fashioned love, not giving all of these material things only, but love. That's it from me in terms of that scenario.
Cornelius,
Yes, sir.
I don't say I can challenge you, but I can probably have a slightly different perspective because I understand what you're trying to say when it comes to love, right? But different people have been taught what love is in many different ways. And your perception, your idea of love, I guarantee, is so much different than some people because you got some parents that believe that I get beat you. If I don't beat you, I don't love you. You understand? And you're talking about parents and parent-child relationships, but these things that this thing called love is so it's so subjective, that we got to be very careful with even using that word. What I would say is that we need to be very, very careful in the early stages of our relationships. This whole concept of experiencing a narcissist is because we allow, as Graham said, the red flags to get too far. We ignore the red flags and we do not lay the foundation to relationships. And when I speak of laying the foundation, I speak of going through that fire together, getting to learn and know each other, getting to be vulnerable with each other, being naked. And I don't mean naked in the physical sense, but being naked in terms of putting all of you out there for your partner to learn and to know who you are. You see, if you go through this, or this way I call this, in my opinion, the initiation phase of the relationship, if you are honest with self, any type of narcissistic traits or behaviors can come out there. Not only that, a lot of the hurt, a lot of the childhood traumas that we experience, a lot of the issues, the abuse, how maybe you would have been treated by a mother or father or grandmother or some relative in the past that impacted you as an adult, it will raise its head at that stage. And your partner at that point will then determine, you know what, well, I could deal with this or I can't deal with this. Many times we leave the hard discussions for 3, 4, 5 years plus down the road. And then it is at that time, your 2, 3 children into the relationship, and you're now having a conversation or you're now experiencing a person/personality that you wondering where this come from when it was always there, but you choose to ignore. And these same narcissistic traits are very evident and very present, but because you spoke of attachment earlier, we connect, and due to the lack of attachment in our earlier life, and I try not to get too academic, due to the attachment issues, you connect so strongly to that individual that it blinds you. You don't see what is there, and after years of going through, I guess, the cycle with this individual, you then say, well, oh, I have a challenge. And then you try to work out what that challenge is, and then say, okay, this is narcissism that I'm dealing with. That could have been avoided. So I really would like people to really pay attention to the foundation of relationships. And this is for those those persons in the early stages, you know, and we want to speak to everybody because we really want to also speak about preventing the cycle from continuing. I mean, you can't stop it because at the end of the day, it's human behavior, and these things are happening. The most we can
Yeah.
do is to mitigate the impact and how it affects us as individuals, you in your personal life going forward.
But Fabian,
Just
I'm glad
spend time
I'm
well
glad
said.
you're
what
saying this.
But I
I'm
want
glad you're saying this because what I found is this, right? There are a lot of people that I have encountered who did not have a foundation with a relationship before they had the children. And after the first child, it was like, well, I have the child now, so we in this there, you got to help support this child. But the female or the male has been rejected by the other parent. Okay, well, that's something else that's going on. But what I found is that that whole thing called relationship in Cayman, there's this phrase says who you for. So if you're gonna come into who you for, who is your family? Who are you? We don't do that anymore. A lot of people are getting together. They don't know who the other person is, and most of the time they don't know who they are themselves because of this whole alienation. You realize that in our society right now, we've got a lot of what we call autoimmune disorders. Okay. And when you look back, there's a serious correlation between the autoimmune disorders and the adverse childhood experiences, part of which include dysfunction in the home. Okay. A lot with everything else. So we've got people, and when you sit down and talk with them, it's not that they had a parent in jail or they themselves went to jail or they were sexually abused. It was, for years, my mother alienated us from father. And I'm not using those words. We're using those words now. Or my father alienated me from the mother. Okay. And now as adults, they're suffering with all these autoimmune. And if it's like a one-off person, you would say, well, that's just, a happenstance. But sometimes 4 or 5 siblings from a particular family are having autoimmune disorders, and it's not necessarily because of genetic only. It is because they've gone through this particular ordeal with dysfunction in the home. And it was so pervasive and so heart-wrenching that apart from all of, and I know you have discussed it before, the depression and anxiety and all of that, their own bodies now have turned against them. And there's that correlation, sometimes as much as 70% in some of the research. Okay. And
yeah.
when people are talking about the red flags, as it were, they don't have the education, don't have the knowledge to say, well, this is happening because of. It's always hindsight later on. Sometimes in their 60s, 50s, and 60s, they're now putting 2 and 2 together. But then they have already had children or not, decide they ain't going through that. They have other relationships or not, because their relationships they couldn't function in relationships because of this. So it's after the fact, when they're already broken, that they say, look, I now think I understand. We're putting terminologies to it in these times. But a lot of people don't go by the terminologies. They're going by how they feel, for how they're being treated, and how much of it they can put up with. And that's a problem. People want to put up with it for the sake of the family until the children get to be a certain age, until they get through with paying off certain loans or debts or whatever, right? But they have to understand that this whole aspect of parent alienation does affect not only the child that they have before you, the baby to school age child, but if it's not dealt with, it's going to affect that particular child all up into their adulthood.
I
And
like that.
then it makes matters worse down the road. Then we
Yeah.
become used to it now because we've got everybody who has these tendencies and we have to react to it.
So
Not good.
don't use the word. It has generational implications.
Yeah.
But before I talk about the generation implications, sorry, Graham, I want to really go back a little bit to something that Fabian raised, and I like the fact that Fabian raised it. That's why I love Fabian on these discussions, because he makes it very, very interesting, spiced up a lot. If you talk about love and about how some people interpret love differently, and that might be true. I have no doubt with that some people will interpret violence or abuse against themselves, but that's dysfunctional, isn't it? What I'm referring to when I talk about love, seeds of love, I'm talking about being supportive, and looking out for the child's best interest or that person's best interest. So if you look at supportive as one of the part of the definition, and looking out for the best interest, bear in mind that when you are supportive to your child and looking out for their best interest, at the time they may not appreciate it. Maybe for the same reason that Fabian is talking about, where the child may not have grown up with you, the child may have been oriented towards the narcissistic parent that they may be grown up with, maybe. But the point of the matter is that in due course, human beings change as they grow. And in due course, when those seeds ripen, that child, now an adult, could look back and say, you know what? I realized that my mommy or my daddy loved me. Because they start to feel the need, the natural human need that human beings have to feel that they were supported in their childhood, to feel that their best interest was looked for. You know that sometimes, even banning a child from going up to a function because of something, you know that as hard as that may seem for the child, you know, the child look back and feel a sense of somebody cared enough to tell me, I'm going to punish you for doing something wrong. You know, the child that doesn't have anybody tell them that they're doing something wrong or getting them a punishment, contrary to popular belief, actually feels more rejection than the child who is getting the attention and getting the punishment put on them sometimes. But the final thing I would want to say now in terms of dealing with your point, Donna, and I love your point as well, is that this thing has generational implications. And generational implication in terms of depression, in terms of drug use, in terms of depression, and it has social implications. Now, Fabian is a social worker. You have to get more police because you have more criminal issues. You have to get more law courts because you have more hearings that you have to have before judges. You need to build more prison because you have more people going to prison because of deviance. You have to build more psychiatric institutions because you have more people depressed, and the list goes on. So what I'm saying is that when we are discussing this topic, I don't want anybody who's listening to think that this topic is one that is in a vacuum. Where in this vacuum, this topic starts and ends at whether you have a narcissist dealing with or whether you have somebody being alienated. I want us to look at the generational implications. I want us to look at the social implications and look at the cost of what it is going to cost us as a society, not only in terms of emotional, psychological costs, but also the financial costs. So there's cost right across the board. So that's my icing on the two of those things: love and the generational implications.
All right, we're heading fast to the finish line, and we're always out of time way too early. But we've had a couple of questions come in from our YouTube and Facebook platforms, and I want to say, Dwayne, Sam asks, there's a sense where everyone has narcissistic tendencies. How do you really determine who is narcissistic? Which I think was already answered. You can't. You need professional help. You really need to go and take the information, take whatever evidence you have to a professional and let them determine, because tendencies does not make the person a full-blown narcissist. A full-blown narcissist is a different thing altogether, where there is a where certain things meet up together and show themselves in a specific way that professionals are trained to recognize. So I think that's definitely something that you need professional help to. Speaking,
Graham,
he continues. Go ahead, Fabian.
I just want to add something there as well, because again, the situations that I see come my direction, I really want to encourage men who may think that they are being alienated against, or they're battling someone who's a narcissist. I want to encourage them to document. Men are very poor at documenting situations, and I guess that's the difference between men and women. What I have seen, where women go court, women just go court with a file. Women has got everything. Women has got everything documented. I mean, like down to the smallest detail. And men just go with the emotions, and that don't really cut it in court. And I really want to encourage people, well, let's say people, not only men, but people generally. If you think that you are a victim of um, narcissistic behavior, document, write down things, write down times, write down behaviors, write down what you experience,
Yes.
write,
Keep records,
document
keep
this,
receipts.
keep a record of what
Yes.
is happening. That whenever you have to face a professional, you can show them that this is what's been happening at what time, whether it's a psychiatrist or otherwise, or even if you end up in the law
Have
court,
witnesses.
you need to
Yes.
document, and find someone that you can trust or confide in and let them know what is happening. I know sometimes we don't trust a lot, but if it is not a friend or a casual person in your space, I guarantee you can find a professional who's bounded by that confidentiality, that code of ethic, who definitely has to keep that information confidential. Find a professional. If you don't have the money to pay, there are organizations out there where you can find a professional to talk to for free. you they are available. There are many NGOs, charities, social services that are available in Barbados where you can find someone where you can talk and share that information. So I just wanted to say that piece, to encourage people to write and document your stuff. I keep it safe. Don't just document and leave the book all over. Keep it safe because that can also become a weapon against you.
I really want to, we do have to wrap up, and this is an unfortunate question to try to wrap up on. I'm gonna, I'm gonna limit it to Donna to answer this very quickly. Mr. Sam, good evening, Dwayne, and thank you for your question. Does our Caribbean historical context have anything to do with the level of parental alienation that we experience in our society? I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
I don't need 3 minutes. The fact that our historical context has contributed to what we would call trauma, okay, is a pretty good excuse for, reason for a lot of the ills that we see. And mind, remember that narcissism, according to the diagnostic psychological assessment, is a mental illness. So yes, what we're seeing in terms of narcissism and even parental alienating behaviors is born out of something. And most of the time, when you trace back, it could be trauma, right? We like to talk about the early the adverse childhood traumas, but we also have historical trauma that is literally in our genotype. So I'm not going to divorce the two at all. You see, I didn't need 3 minutes.
Well done, ma'am. Well done. You gotta have her back, Cornelius.
Having said that, fair enough. Yeah, we definitely for sure. She's a gem. But having said that though, it is having said that and put that in context, it is a worldwide phenomenon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I do agree with Donna that trauma is at the root of it, because when I started my studies on narcissism, one of the things that I realized early in the research is that childhood trauma, certain types of childhood trauma like neglect and that kind of thing, and rejection, those sort of things contribute to actually narcissistic adults. Yeah. So it's not obviously our Caribbean experience would contribute. We can look back at the ravages and the social fallout of slavery and all that, but this happens not to be localized to only persons who went through our experience, but it is also happening amongst all ethnic groups, all cultures that we have looked at so far. All as far as Italy, they're carrying out research on this
Yes.
because it's existent all in Italy. In the US, done a lot of research.
Yes, and although the Caribbean experience with slavery was horrendous, when you look at what the Europeans did to each other, what the Asians did to each other, you will see, genotype
history
trauma all through history.
Fabian, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to drop some sprinkles. I don't know if we could put a whole cherry. We might not have space for that, but a few sprinkles on top. Let's wrap this up this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Just really would like to get people out there to start doing a lot of reflection. I know Cornelius believes that we can't really wrestle the narcissist to the ground, but I do believe there's hope. I do believe those persons who may just have the narcissistic traits can do a lot more reflection and maybe focus and become a lot more self-aware of those behaviors with an attempt to really change, not only for themselves, but for the sake of their family and children. And I really would like those persons who are looking to get involved in a union, whether it be marriage, whether get children together, know your partner. We sometimes we are very poor at our partners. We choose very, very poor partners and then we complain later on. So take some time, learn your partner, get vulnerable, get naked in the sense of putting everything out there, the good, the bad, and the different about yourself, and let the partner say, you know what, we continue with this. If you don't want me at that point in time, we'll go along, because then you will face issues later on in the relationship. So I just want people to really grow strong families, and so that we can have a really, really solid society.
Thank you so much, lady. Thank you so very much, gentlemen. This has been Family Fest Barbados, another fantastic panel discussion where we focus on narcissism and parental alienation. I'm Graham Vaughan, and as we go this evening, I just want to encourage you. It was said that a lot of people don't understand love. I did mention it the last time I was a host. 1 Corinthians 13, you hear it all the time at weddings and such, like the love chapter. And there's a very interesting part in that in verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I reasoned as a child, I behaved as a child. But when I became a man, I decided to put away childish things. Maturity is a choice. I pray that, as Fabian said, we all do some reflection and decide to become a little bit more mature. And in becoming more mature, decide to be here on Thursday evening at 7:30 for the next installment of Family Fest Barbados. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. Well.